Hey everybody. My name is Warren Lowell. I'm a student representative on the Student Activities Committee with APPAM. I'm so happy you've all joined this afternoon. We are waiting on one more speaker who should be joining us any moment, but we're going to get started just with introductions from everyone as we're waiting. Again, this is just so we're all in the right Zoom room. This is a webinar put on by APPAM, hoping to sort of demystify the process of applying for funding and grants. And the goal here is to hear from some representatives from grant giving institutions and organizations to hopefully demystify what that process looks like and what that looks like on the ground. And then also hear from some grant getters in their early careers to learn more about what that process was like for them and how the getting grants and receiving grants has sort of fit into their career trajectories. So I'll just start by asking our two funding representatives who are here so far, Colleen and Stephen, to just introduce yourselves, and then followed by the two early career grant getters to introduce yourselves after that. So we can start with anyone. If Colleen, you want to start maybe?
Hi, everybody. I'm Colleen Harwood. I'm the Senior Manager for Grant Operations at the Washington Center for Equitable Growth, and we are a think tank and grant-making organization.
Hi, folks. I'm Stephen Glauser. I'm a Senior Program Officer at the Russell Sage Foundation. The Russell Sage Foundation is broadly a social science funder across a whole bunch of different disciplines, so it actually overlaps really well with APPAM. And I focus on our early career programs, so I hope that this is a really good match.
Thanks, both of you. And then maybe, and Ice has joined us. We were just giving introductions if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Oh, you're on mute.
Oh no, I'm still having trouble hearing. Is anyone else?
We can't hear you. No,
Still nothing. Okay, well, East does some troubleshooting. Let's just have Matt and Maria give introductions quickly.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt Fowle. I am a postdoc at the Housing Initiative at the University of Pennsylvania.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Warren, for inviting me and the organizing committee. I'm Associate Professor of Public Administration at the University of Texas at San Antonio, and I'm an awardee of a Fulbright Scholar award.
Awesome, thanks. And yeah, Matt, do you want to say what the grant was or any of the funding opportunities that you've had during your early career? I think we asked you originally about the Horowitz. But...
Yes. I've received the Horowitz Foundation for Social Policy Fellowship, a fellowship from the West Coast Poverty Center, and then more recently a grant from the National Alliance to End Homelessness.
Awesome, thanks.
Can you hear me now, since we're talking about Horowitz?
Yes, we can.
Please,
Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Of course, yeah. I'm making amazing first impressions. Hi, everybody. I am the chair of Horowitz Foundation. And Matt, it's a pleasure to see you. And I've recently became the chair. We usually grant 20 recipients each year at their PhD writing level. Our grantees are ABDs, all but dissertations, and that's when they apply to support their dissertation research or just to support them financially during their dissertation. So we don't require specific, budgets or anything. We're just here to support amazing policy researchers that are rising to the ranks.
Amazing. Well, that's actually a great transition too. So the structure of this session today is going to be roughly in 3 sections. First, we're going to ask to hear from the representatives from grant giving institutions and organizations, and we have a few questions structured prepared for them. The goal too, I just want to highlight, was to get organizations that provide grants to early career scholars sort of across disciplines, and also that have some policy relevance as well, as this is an APPAM webinar. Then we're going to transition to talking with some of the early career scholars and learning more about the funding opportunities that they've had and how they've played into their careers. And then we're going to shoot for about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A from audience members at the end. So when questions strike you, feel free to write a question in the chat, or jot it down wherever you want to jot it down, and you can raise your hand when we get to Q&A at the end of the session. So I think we'll start with grant giving institutions and organizations, and I'll just ask you all, each 3 of you, maybe just to first describe the different funding opportunities that your organization provides, especially geared towards early career scholars. So maybe we can, again, start with Colleen first.
Sure. So Equitable Growth is kind of newly offering a specific request for proposals directly advertised towards early career folks like the ones on this call. We release an annual RFP in November with applications due at the end of the following January that kind of go across disciplines, and we're looking for researchers that are interested in translating their research for policymakers and interested in making connections with policymakers. And for that reason, this RFP doesn't just ask for a research proposal. We also ask for a 1 to 2 page personal statement, so that the applicant can provide a little bit more information to us as the reviewers on your career aspirations, your interest and connection to the policy world, and kind of to make the case that we should invest not just in your research, but in you as the scholar, kind of bringing you into the Equitable Growth Network. Do you want me to go in a little deeper about the specific program?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Sure. So this request for proposals, we are offering funding for set amounts. So $30,000 for the recipient if they are an early career scholar. So that we're defining that as within 8 years of receiving your PhD and not yet tenured. So those are set at $30,000, and then our doctoral students can apply for funding, and that is a set amount of $15,000. And typically those grants are anywhere from 1 to 2 years. And we're, like I said, we are intending to support individuals to advance their research agenda and their career. We're interested in engagement beyond academia. The financial support can go just as stipend support, especially for the students. Funding is typically just for stipend support, which is great. And then we ask for a more specific budget if the funding is going to go towards research assistance or data purchases. We ask for that in a more detailed budget. Sorry, let me catch up on my notes here. I should talk about our policy, our interest areas, which we are still shaping the new RFP for 2025. I would love to have it all squared away by now, but we're not quite there yet. But things will not change drastically from previous years. So in the 2024 early career request for proposals, we focused on the 6 areas of macroeconomic growth, fiscal policy, human capital and well-being, economic mobility, labor market, and market structure. And those all sound really broad, and that's on purpose. We have broad funding interests, and we also offer office hours for our applicants so that they can reach out to us if they're not sure if their research is a good fit for us. We try to get back. We do get back to everyone at least via email, if not scheduling a 15 to 30 minute Zoom with them so that we can get a feel for their project. We have found that to be a sweet spot where we don't we aren't reading applications before the deadline. That's kind of where we draw the line. We're not going to read your full proposal before the deadline, because that's not fair to everybody, but we do across the board offer the opportunity to give us a 200-word explanation of what your topic is, just so we're not wasting anybody's time. You don't have to go through the whole application process if it's not a right fit for Equitable Growth's funding interests. But I'll let other
Amazing.
people talk now.
Yeah, thanks so much, Colleen. And jot that down, potential applicants' office hours. It sounds like a fantastic resource. All right, let's transition over to Stephen.
Sure. So I'm glad Colleen went first, because I'm going to jump off of a lot of what she said. But so at the Russell Sage Foundation, we have 2 early career programs, one for sort of assistant professors, which we sort of define, we accept anyone who's an assistant professor. And then if you're an adjunct or an instructor or someone not on the tenure track, we also accept you in that program, so long as you've gotten your PhD within the past 7 years. And that's called our pipeline grants competition. And that has a once a year deadline in the fall. I think it's in maybe October 22nd, but I would have to go double check on that. I should have done more homework ahead of this call, but it's in late October. So that's coming up. That's for people, again, post PhD. For individuals applying, it's up to $35,000 for research costs. If there's a team of assistant professors, they can apply for up to $50,000. That grant comes with some mentorship, and it comes with a sort of a capstone conference at the end, where folks present to each other and get feedback from the other folks. Then separately in the spring, in early February or late January, we have a dissertation award. Again, very similar for folks who are ABD. Actually, it's both similar to both Equitable Growth and Horowitz. It's ABD. It's sort of in between. It's up to $15,000, and half of that can be for stipend. The other half we like to go towards research costs. That can be access to data, to do a survey, to do some qualitative interviews, to pay for transcription. It can also pay for conference travel, things like equipment that you need to do. So if you need a laptop or things like that. Those are all normal research costs that we can pay for in both programs. And I'll talk a little bit about RSF's program areas, and like Equitable Growth, these are pretty broad and they actually overlap. So if you have questions about which program to apply to, we have a similar email address / office hours system that you can do. Our program areas are I'll call it inequality. I think the official title is social, political, and economic inequality, but it's just inequality broadly. We have another program area on race, ethnicity, and immigration. And right there, you can obviously see points where there's overlap between inequality and immigration status, or inequality in what racial group you're in. And then we have another one that we call the future of work. This is it really has anything to do with the labor market. We put into the future of work category. It can be anything from like robots taking our jobs, questions about labor power, questions about the minimum wage debate. Any of these sort of things fall under our future of work program. And then finally, we have a broad program on the behavioral sciences and decision making. I'll say with a caveat, we're not really interested in those data sets where you're taking that are really great data sets on like the history of umpire decisions in baseball, or something like that. We're interested in the behavioral science as it applies to our other program areas. So behavioral science in inequality, or in the labor market, or any of those other things. But yeah, the only thing I'll mention is that our general email address that you should reach out to if you want to send us an abstract, much like Colleen said, is programs@rsage.org. Actually, I realized I can just put it in the chat as well, but I'll stop there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephen. And great to know that y'all are also willing to sort of give some feedback on fit of applications. All right, and let's move on to ICE.
Oh, you're still muted.
I'm going to still piggyback on what both Steve and Colleen said. We are limited to PhD candidates right now. We give 20 grants. Most of them are $10,000. And then we also give an additional $3,000 award and another additional $5,000 award for the most significant two of our, one is, trustees grant, and the other one is the Irving Horowitz Award. So one person gets 15, one person gets 13, the other 18 gets $10,000 every year. Regarding the topic areas, I would say anything that would inform social policy. We keep it very broad, anything that would inform social policy. And we do have expertise to review all these grants, and our application process is a little more simplified than the other two that we discussed. Applications are usually collected in the fall. They're due December 1st. We are expecting 2 reference forms. I wouldn't say reference letters. We used to do reference letters. Now we're doing targeted questions to 2 referees. And we're requiring a 750-word description of what the student is doing, how the student is doing, and why it matters for social policy. So so that our student, we are interested in people who know how to target other audiences, not just academic audiences, but other audiences that can convince any type of grantees. Again, one more thing. For APPAM, we're going to be celebrating our 25th anniversary, our silver anniversary this year, and there will be a reception on Thursday evening in APPAM, so feel free to join us. I'll also put in the email for the foundation, so we're happy to answer any questions you have on those, on topic areas or anything else related to the funding opportunity. That's it.
Amazing. Thanks so much. All right, participants. Well, now you've got contact information for 3 folks to, if you leave now, but you should stay, you'll have contact information for 3 folks who can sort of help you think about the fit of your projects with regards to their funding opportunities. I think the next question we have prepared for you all for the granting organizations is about the application review process. So I think our audience would like to know what that looks like, not just in terms of timelines, but how do applications get reviewed? What do the rubrics look like? What in particular makes a strong candidate? Those are sort of the 3 questions I'll put in that bucket. And maybe again, we can start with Colleen.
Sure. So our proposals are evaluated first by Equitable Growth staff, and then they are put out to review by external reviewers. And we put together external review committees that consist of subject matter and methodological experts that we might not necessarily have in-house the right fit for such the broad categories we fund in. So we put together a committee so that it's a well-rounded review process. And our applications I'll talk about our rubrics. We are evaluating on first the relevance to Equitable Growth's funding priorities. So that's kind of the first step. I might read a proposal and a research personal statement that is very well written and a really interesting topic, great project, but it's not a fit for our funding priorities. So it's not necessarily going to make it through to the next round. Then we're focused on the potential of the proposed research and overall research agenda of the applicant to generate actionable insights and inform policy design and implementation. Then we are asking reviewers to comment on the researcher's potential to engage beyond academia to inform evidence-backed policy solutions. And then we are looking at whether the proposed research questions are appropriately framed within the existing literature and the methodological soundness of the research design, including appropriate data. Those are all weighted evenly in the review process right now. Certain questions are asked of external reviewers and certain are asked of internal reviewers, but it's pretty much an equal weight across the board there. Like I mentioned earlier, for this program in particular, we are trying to balance funding the person and funding the project.
Awesome. Thanks, Colleen. Stephen, what about Russell Sage?
Sure. So very similarly, again, we have at first we have this internal review step where the program staff sort of filter. You can sort of think of us like editors at a journal. We're desk rejecting applications that are not good fits for the foundation topic-wise. I'll tell you, we get a lot of applications that are just sort of, you can tell they were last minute because people procrastinate and they just aren't up to the quality level. So we don't want to send those out to external review. So internally, we're primarily just assessing for fit. And then we're also assessing for sort of like timing, like if you if the project's too preliminary, like you're still sort of figuring out what your research design is, it's probably a little bit too early. We do want to see those details of the research design because, like Colleen said, we're going to be sending this out to external review to folks who are subject matter and methodological experts. And we want to actually have them have something to evaluate. So we're asking them to basically, a lot of what Colleen said, I'm just gonna like copy and paste, but then we're essentially looking for like, does this research design match the research question being posed, and like how well connected are those? And then we're asking them to sort of comment on that, give any suggestions they have, and then we take those recommendations from the external reviewers. It'll be on the order of 4 or 5 external reviewers per proposal. And then we basically digest all of those and share them with an advisory committee who are much more senior, sort of experts in their field, established folks. And we come up with the cohort who's going to be funded through I don't know, a really intensive, maybe 90-minute Zoom call where we would just hammer it out. But I will say one thing that we do not evaluate on is budgets. So for both of the programs that we have, a budget is not required at the time of application. We don't solicit budgets from folks until you know that you're going to be funded. And then we actually have an onboarding webinar with the grantee cohort where we work together with you to come up with a budget. Because we recognize that these are early career folks. They've never necessarily had to put together a budget before. So we'll help you put together one that meets all of our guidelines and things like that. But essentially what it means is we're never evaluating on like dollar amount. We're not like, oh, this person asked for less money than this person, so we're more likely to fund them. We're evaluating completely on like the essentially the strength of the research design, and if you've already passed that initial filter of being a fit for the foundation.
Great, thanks, Stephen. All right, Ice, wrap us up on this question.
This time I'm not on mute. Great. So we're a smaller foundation compared to Russell Sage or Washington Center, definitely. So we rely on our trustees. We make sure our asset is our trustees with so much policy experience. And when there's an opening on the board, we make sure that we try to cover the area that we're weak in, making sure, for example, if you're not strong in criminal justice, we try to make sure that an expert in criminal justice fills that trustee spot. So, but the other thing is we also rely on the 2 referees with very targeted questions about the research, about the significance of the research question, about its potential to inform public policy and social policy, about the methodology and how good the fit is between the methodology and the person, and also about the candidate and the likelihood of this research project being finished on time. So we also rely with very targeted questions on the advisors of the candidate. We expect one of those advisors to be the dissertation chair, or at least one of them to be part of the dissertation chair committee. Like I said, we don't have any specific focus areas because of the fact that we are looking for groundbreaking work, that's something really innovative or have very high potential to impact policy. Regarding the budget, we don't require any budget information. Actually, we have been doing some informal queries with our, past grantees, what they did with the money, and many of them use it for research purposes. But also we had people who said, that time between you defend your dissertation, you lined up for your assistant professor position, but then the wage doesn't come. That's where your money really helped me get my groceries. So many of them use it for, interview purposes, this, that, but then we don't have any requirements about the budget. 3/4 of the money is provided approximately. So the applications are in December 1st. The boards are generally reported in May or June, and 3/3 of the money comes in then. And then once the student publishes or completes the dissertation, they get the rest of it. So those are our rubrics, basically. What we ask the references, as well as how those references come into our board, and we review everything within the board. We have 3 stages of reviews, just like Colleen and Stefan said, but our first stage is also not a staff review, but a trustee review about fit, yes, no. And then we start scoring applications and go through 2 more other rounds, and then announce our awardees every year.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. I think that's helpful information for our attendees, a little bit more about how the sausage gets made, the part of the process we don't hear a lot about. And then I think I just have sort of one final general question we've prepared, and we can open this up to all 3 of you to sort of jump in whenever you want. One is sort of 2 sides of the same coin, which is, what are some common characteristics about really successful applicants or applications? So any sort of like bits of advice to create a successful application. And on the flip side, what are some common mistakes that you see on applications that either end up, as Stephen said, to be a desk reject, or sort of end up sinking the ship for application? So I'll let sort of whoever wants to jump in and sort of speak on those 2 questions, go for it.
I'll jump in and just say, please take us up on the offer for either office hours or a quick email with an abstract of what your project is about. Folks really don't do that enough, and do it well ahead of the deadline to give us time to respond to you in like a way that can be helpful to you. The closer you get to that deadline, the less we're going to be able to help you. So if you reach out to us very early, we can even set up like a half an hour one-on-one Zoom conversation with you if we like your project and want to help you sort of put together the strongest application. So yeah, please reach out to the staff at these foundations. We are here to help. Hopefully we're not that intimidating. We're just people. And then on the other one, I'll say it's similar. Don't procrastinate. We see a lot of a majority of our applications come in on the due date, so you can just tell that a lot of them are rushed and thrown together last minute. So I would really encourage you to do it well ahead of time, and please reach out to us.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'll second the last minute stuff. Something I noticed, particularly this last cycle, was that I had a lot. I'm doing the very first round review initially, and a part of that is just checking for eligibility and completeness of the application. And I could not count this year how many people uploaded their CV twice instead of their proposal. And I'm really nice. So I email them and say, hey, I'm reopening your app, but not every funder is going to do that. We get hundreds of applications, but I feel bad that I know it's stressful applying for funding and people do it last minute. So I take the time and email people to say, hey, I think you accidentally uploaded the same file twice. Do you have a proposal you want to submit? I've opened it up for you, but I know that not every funder has time to do that. And it happened a lot this year. So taking your time to make sure you're submitting things where they're supposed to go. And then also we offer a very quick template for our research proposal. Since it's only 5 pages, we find that before we implemented the template, we found that some folks were spending like 3 of the 5 pages focused on just getting really into the weeds on the topic of of their research, and then leaving no space for the methods or the policy engagement, just taking up too much space. So we have a template where we have recommended word counts for each, and also recommended to just type right into the template, use those headers, makes it so easy for the reviewers to follow your writing, and just keeps it organized writing. So whether or not you're using our template or other funders' templates, or just trying to stay organized, because I know a lot of folks ask for really short letters of inquiry or just short proposals. It can be hard to fit everything in that you need. So if a funder offers a template, use the template.
Amazing. Thanks, Colleen. Gosh, I'm applying to jobs right now, and that is my worst nightmare. Uploading the wrong document. So that's very kind of you to do that. Ice, what about you from your perspective?
I'll have to echo everything my colleagues said, and don't rush things. Make sure they're clean. Make sure you're clear about what you're doing. It's a good idea to discuss these applications with your referees. So basically, you're going to give us the name of your referees, and they're going to get a form from us. And it's a good idea for you guys to discuss these referee questions maybe with them. First of all, most of the research we're interested in are empirical research. So if the draft doesn't, if the application is not fully clean and polished that's coming to us, how can we even trust that you're going to do the programming right or anything, so, those are eliminated at the beginning. What gets eliminated towards the end is we come to a point where applications are all amazing. So, what's likely to make more impact is always in the question. But you know what we noticed? When the advisors describe the research a lot better than the student, that's a red flag for us. Okay. So the clarity of what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how it's going to impact social policy. Clearly articulating what you're doing in a 750 words is very important for this foundation. And obviously, we're going to look at the rigor, scientific rigor. We're going to look at the methods, and we're going to look at how your work fits within the literature. But again, we're also relying on your advisors, dissertation advisors, on that as well. So this directed forms for dissertation advisors, it's a new policy. We used to just get the regular letters that they've been writing for job market generally. I mean, we would just ask for a reference letter and they would forward their job market letters for us. And this is a new practice. So some of the referees open up the request from Horowitz Foundation on the last minute and realize that they can't just upload a letter. They have to work on what their answers, even though it's straightforward. That's a surprise for them, especially because we're in the first years of this implementation. So talk to your advisors, talk to your referees about what's expected of them.
Amazing. That's really insightful. And I hope our audience members take note. Talk with your dissertation committee if you are applying to the Horowitz Foundation, and let them know it is not just a letter. This was great. So insightful. Thank you, everyone. We're going to transition now to our patient early career scholars, Maria and Matt. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions, just like I did with our granting organizations. And the first one sort of just asks you to expand upon sort of the funding opportunities that you shared with us earlier. How did you find them? How did they come to your desk? And how did you make the decision to sort of take the leap and think that what you wanted to do fit with the funding opportunity? And maybe we can start with Maria.
Sure, thank you. So I applied, so I am speaking about my experience as a Fulbright scholar. I applied to Fulbright research. Fulbright has hundreds of possible, opportunities for students, for early, early career faculty, for later on, and even for like administrators. But I always had Fulbright in my radar in a way. But I applied because it was early career scholar, and I was getting closer. I was on my last year and a half before I submitted my tenure and promotion packet. So I was still, assistant professor, and I just needed to really sort of have the time to work on my research for a semester without having to teach. And so in that context is that I applied for the Fulbright scholar position. I ended up going to Canada for a semester, working on immigration policy during COVID-19. My project was related to how the Canadian government responded to COVID-19 in terms of in regards of asylum applications. And then I came back and did something similar with the US. And so so I, it had been in my radar, and my university usually puts the calls out. And so I knew I wanted to apply, and I just didn't, I just probably didn't think I was a good fit before. I didn't know so much about the Fulbright program, but that's how I applied. I don't know if I'm answering the question, Warren, or if you want me to go into more detail in any particular way.
I think that perfectly covers the question. I'll follow up with some more sort of about the application writing process afterwards, but I think that's a great answer to get us kicked off. How about you, Matt?
Let me just begin by saying you've just been given presentations by 3 different organizations who all have fellowships that are available to you as PhD students. So if you are a PhD student, you should definitely be thinking about applying to all 3 of these organizations, assuming your research fits into their specific areas. So I would put those on your list and definitely make a plan to submit a really great application to each of these fellowships. The second thing to do if you're looking for other grants and fellowships, I think, is I was told by a mentor to look at the CVs of the people who do research that you're interested in, especially those who are further in their career, and take a look at what grants and fellowships they received. I think that's a great place to start. Also asking your colleagues, your fellow PhD students, the postdocs, the early tenure track professors in your department or school, what grants and fellowships they applied for. And you can even ask them for an example of a successful proposal. And most colleagues will be more than happy to provide you one. And then the last thing I'd recommend is to sign up for a whole host of listservs and newsletters, whether it's the APPAM conference or the APPAM newsletter or listserv, your departmental or school newsletters that go out, and any kind of major nonprofits or government agencies that offer funding. So for me, in the kind of housing and homelessness space, it's places like HUD, the National Alliance to End Homelessness, the kind of housing research centers. And then I usually put them all in one folder so that I can look at them when I'm thinking about grants. And then once you have that list together, you kind of, all of these are offered on a cycle, right? Usually an annual cycle. So you pretty much know when in the year each type of funding is going to be offered. So you can kind of plan your schedule around then. So you at least give yourself a couple of months to prepare the application for each source.
Thanks so much, Matt. I think those are fantastic recommendations. I think my next question, sort of similar to the question to the grant giving organizations, is a little bit more on how the sausage of your applications were made. So could you tell us more about how you went about writing your application? Did you have peers or advisors look over those applications? Did you have to engage anyone at your university to submit the application? What did that process look like? How did you iterate and draft, et cetera? And maybe we can start with Maria again.
Sure. So for me, the writing process, so I really first look at the guidelines. I looked very closely at what was needed. I mean, I'm kind of gonna switch into maybe other things that you may ask later, but like I started with plenty of time, which is something that the three speakers talked about in their foundations. I started probably 9 months at least before the deadline. I mean, I had been eyeing and looking at that. And again, as Matt just said, once you know the application cycle, I mean, if you're not ready 1 year, I mean, you know, it's in the back of your mind. And so that's, I tackled it early on. I really looked at the applications, at the application guidelines. I think I remember I requested feedback from a couple of people in my field, and they gave me some feedback. And maybe I think I asked a prior grantee of the Fulbright Scholar Program, and so I think that was very helpful. And to write the proposal, and also another very helpful step for me was to attend office hours. And there were office hours were pretty massive in terms of you might not be able to ask a lot of questions like about your case, but you can submit some questions in advance, but then you get a lot into like how to really what is important for the successful application. So I would highlight those items mainly.
Amazing. Thanks, Maria. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I agree with all Maria's points. I think always talk to your advisor or dissertation committee or referees. If you are planning to apply for something, you need to let them know in advance, usually many weeks, even months in advance, because they're probably going to have to write you some kind of reference letter. They also are going to be able to help you edit your proposal or at least review it and offer feedback. So you always need to let kind of your advisor team know what you're thinking of applying to. And then I think a lot of it is, as the folks before us have mentioned, kind of tailoring to the needs of the fellowship. If you're writing for the Russell Sage Foundation's fellowship and it's around behavioral insights, then you better make sure that your proposal is around behavioral insights, right? So super obvious things, but I think sometimes get missed. And then I'd also say, don't get overly focused on kind of field specific knowledge and things that perhaps people who are not involved in your exact niche are not going to understand. You're probably going to have someone who's an expert, but they may not be an expert on the exact thing that you're studying. So making sure kind of the policy implications are really clear and are generally understandable by an expert, but not, someone who's exactly doing what you're doing. And then I would just ask people to review your proposal. Someone you trust who's going to provide honest feedback. Are your aims understandable? Do they think your research is worthwhile funding? Asking them those questions always helps.
Wonderful. Thanks, Matt. Okay, and then the last question I have for you all before we open it up to our eager audience for Q&A is just to highlight how these funding opportunities that you received, how have they helped advance your career? I think Maria already touched on this, but if you'd like to expand, I think that's our last question for the panel of grant recipients.
Thank you, Warren. Yes, I would say to me, I mean, this was fundamental, I think, to help me, the opportunity to help me achieve, this uninterrupted time with my research, finishing up a couple of, projects and papers, and that was clearly a game changer for my promotion and tenure application. along the lines of the reputation, right, of the granting agency. So Fulbright is very well known, and as of all these very prestigious agencies that are being represented here, foundations. And so I think that that can be, I mean, that's crucial, especially if you're just coming out of your PhD. I probably Matt would agree with me. It's like you already are able to get grants, I mean, and fellowships. I mean, it may not be the NSF grant that later on you might apply to, but the fact that you have had success, it's totally a game changer for me, in many other ways as well. Connections with a new university, with new people, I mean, it goes networking, so it goes all along, and my own institution as well, because now I'm helping people apply, or I give advice. I am a Fulbright Scholar Ambassador for a period of time. So yeah, it opened a lot of doors for me.
Amazing. Thanks, Maria. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, just to distinguish first of all between fellowships and grants. The fellowships invest in you as a scholar researcher, and then the grants usually fund like a project. I mean, there's overlap, but that's the general distinction. I think the fellowships are amazing because what they do often is buy you time to work on your dissertation or time to work on your research. And that's one of the most valuable things that you can get when you're at the dissertation stage. So for me, it was kind of buying my time so I didn't have to teach so much. Or, in that, especially if you're an international student, which I was, you often find it difficult to get funding during the summer, and you can only work at a research institution. So that was amazing for me, just to be able to pay my rent and keep focusing on my research. So fellowships, super invaluable for just even the mundane costs in life. And then grants, I think, are a different ball game. And I think we probably worry about too much as PhD students. I think that's something where you partner with somebody who has gone through this experience before, someone who's more experienced, and they help you kind of fund specific research costs.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. All right. Well, those were the sort of questions I had prepared, but I'm willing to wager that we have some audience members who have some questions of their own. So I will ask you if you have a question for anyone who's served on the panel or either sort of side of the panel. You can type in a question into the chat, or you can raise your hand and I will call on you. But feel free to volunteer questions. Great. Okay, we have a question in the chat regarding office hours. What should you be bringing to office hours when you attend them? Proposal summary, abstract aims, etc. So that's the first question we've got from our audience. If anyone wants to jump in.
Yeah, this is great because we've been encouraging you to do this, so we should tell you. I'll say, let us know which funding opportunity you're applying to. Like, if you're if you're applying to the dissertation level grants, or if you're applying to a different grant, let us know that, because that's a good initial filter for us. And then, yeah, something like a short abstract. For us at Russell Sage, we don't have like a limit that we want these emails to be in, but give us an idea of the topic and the work that you're going to be doing. And if you can also give us a hint about the research design, it might be like, oh, I'm using these data and here's how I'm going to analyze it. I'm talking like 1 or 2 sentences just to sort of put us in the right frame of mind. That's all really, really helpful. But in reality, this shouldn't be longer than a couple sentences. That'll usually be enough for us to say, like, oh yes, this is worth even setting up a call with, or I can also, it may be enough to say, oh, this isn't a focus of the foundation, you should probably go somewhere else, like the Horowitz Foundation or something like that.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Colleen or Ice, do you have anything to add here?
No, I think we covered it. Our office hours form is more of a form that it's available once the RFP is released. So it asks for all of this similar information in the form, as well as I think we have a drop-down menu to indicate what questions you're looking to have answered. Most of them are, is my project a good fit for your funding opportunity? But sometimes we have folks that are more interested just in some mechanical things of how to put together their application. And that tells me that either I can answer their questions via email or I can hop on a quick call with them and I don't need to bring in a subject matter expert on the call.
Awesome. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Do any of your organizations support research outside of the US? Does your organization make that distinction? And what is the stance on that? Are there hard lines, for example?
I'm going to jump on that, and I had to switch to a phone with existing issues. So I'm on the phone. That's why I don't have my camera on. Apologies for that. Horowitz Foundation doesn't require citizenship, permanent residency. We get applications from all around the world, and we grant applications to we grant fellowships to many non-US citizens within the US, as well as people that are proposals are related to other countries, Africa, Europe, India. We get a lot from India. We get some from Asia. So we are open worldwide. You don't need to be a citizen. You don't need to be a green card holder. Your research doesn't have to be only about the United States. And I think that's one part that distinguishes us from many other foundations. That's a harder thing to find. Just like Matt said, I was also an international student, and it was very hard to get by, particularly in the summers and everything. So that's the gap we're trying to fill.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Stephen, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so for Russell Sage, topically, we're generally limited to things that are related to the US. So that's just based on when we were founded and everything they put down at that time. But we don't have restrictions based on citizenship or country of origin or anything like that. For our dissertation program, we do require that you are at a US institution, however. For our other larger grants programs for professors beyond PhD, we don't have that restriction, but for our dissertation grants program, we do.
Awesome. And then Colleen, do you want to jump in quickly for equitable growth?
Sure, we have similar guidelines to RSF. We fund at US, you have to be at a US institution. You don't have to be a US citizen. And we're generally interested in work that is related to US policy, but there are instances where someone is doing research in another country where there's a policy that's not yet in the United States, but it's a good example. So it could be applicable to the United States policy. So we're not totally restricted to research that's taking place in the United States.
Awesome, thanks. I'm seeing some organization-specific questions that I'm going to recommend our questioners reach out now that we have the contact information for these folks. And I'm gonna highlight a question that goes to the recipient panel for our last question, and I think we'll be at time. So for Maria and Matt, could you provide a little more information about what your regular practice around finding funding opportunities looks like? Are there listservs that you're on that are particularly helpful? Do you have, I think Matt mentioned a list, so maybe you could tell us how you found the organizations that you've put on that list, and maybe that'll be our last question for the webinar. So Maria, you can jump in first.
I can start. So I think one idea, if you don't really know where to start, I mean, this is a good venue for sure. If nothing else, this already gives you plenty of ideas. But I think also when you go to a conference, if you're gonna go to APPAM in November, go to to where all the foundations, I guess the hall where usually taking the book displays along with like foundations, basically offering you opportunities. Just make sure you visit with them, you take their information, even places or foundations that you may not know right now, they may be there. So I think that's what I would do, aside from you know, possibly going through, you know, looking and typing, you know, doing a search on the web and, you know, and searching that way for you know, possible grants and fellowships.
Awesome. Thanks, Maria. And how about you, Matt?
Yeah, I recommend Maria's strategy, and I think the list is something you just build up over time as you see more opportunities. And there aren't that many obscure funding opportunities that nobody has ever heard of before. So I think kind of random searches is not a good strategy. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, that brings us to time. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm hoping this has illuminated some of the mystery around grants and fellowships. I want to thank everyone who participated on the panel for sharing all this really helpful information and sharing your contact information too. So please go back through the chat. Stephen, Ice, and Colleen have shared contact information with you that you can ask them sort of questions in particular to the funding opportunities they provide. And thanks everyone for participating.
Thank you.